We break down all of Justin Fields' friends from Ohio State next on the Unbearable Sports Podcast.
Yeah, she's got some nice long hair.
Welcome back to the Unbearable Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Brad Barron, and welcome back into another incredible episode. I'm really excited about this one because I just want to know who can we get out of Ohio State, and also want to just kind of talk about who are they and what to kind of expect, and should we be excited if the Bears would be able to draft one of these players, and should we be jumping all over that opportunity? So thanks again for tuning in. Make sure to like and subscribe if you're out on YouTube. If you haven't already, download this podcast on any spot that you listen to podcasts, Apple Music, Spotify. Make sure to rate us 5 stars out there, and let's get this show on the road. Like I was saying, there's a lot of draft prospects from Ohio State, and me, first and foremost, I'm a fan. I want to see who can we surround Justin Fields with that's a former teammate, and just looking, where can they go? Where do people have them ranked? And also just a little bit of insight what I think about that individual player as well. So we're actually going to just start from the top. We'll start our way on the top, and we'll slowly start to kind of go down the draft board and talk about each individual player. So for those watching on YouTube, I'll just use a couple different clips from different people that they've thrown together. I'll have all the links to the full highlights in the description. So let's get this started with the number one prospect. We don't have a first round draft pick, so you can already assume chances are we're probably not going to get him, but we'll still talk about it right now. So right now, we're looking at a Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson is really seen as kind of the number one wide receiver in this draft. And the biggest reason why he's seen that way is because he has absolutely incredible hands. He can kind of snatch it out of the air like crazy, as you can see. But really, he's got amazing burst, speed, and his route running is very, very good. Able to create a lot of separation and create something after the catch. You love to see that with a number one wide receiver that you would want to draft. The only thing that I will say, my biggest critique is that in a lot of years, number one wide receivers usually have at least some size to back with them. Garrett Wilson is 6 feet tall and weighed in at 180 pounds. That's very light. It was a lot lighter than what a lot of people thought his normal play weight was. So to me, when you see like a Garrett Wilson, I get a little bit nervous because I don't see that complete number one wide receiver, and that's why I don't like the idea of the Bears potentially trading up and going and grabbing him. He really struggles with this size to get off of the line. So to me, he looks more like a slot person, just so that you're trying to keep him away from any type of press coverage. It's not me saying he's bad or he's a bust. It's just saying if you're drafting someone that high, then, I expect kind of the full package. So actually, I want to talk a little bit about where people actually have him going. So the overall rank. So this is actually the rank before draft position. PFF has him ranked as the 12th best player in the draft class. The Draft Network actually has him ranked as the 26th prospect that's out there. And there's also a big board, I think it's mockdraft.com. I can post that in the description as well. But they have a consensus draft board that they pull all the different draft boards from across the internet and compile it. He's actually ranked 10th. So is there a chance that we get Garrett Wilson? No, most likely not, unless we're trading a huge draft haul to move up. We saw how much it was to go from a first round draft pick to 11 last year with Justin Fields. It's going to be a little bit crazy because also TDN, the Draft Network, has him projected to go about at 11, and PFF has him projected to go about 12. In a lot of mock drafts, what I'm seeing is he goes around to the 8 to 15 range, 15 being the lowest that you see him go. And also in 26% of mock drafts done by people at PFF, he's mocked to the Jets. So just something to be on the lookout for. If you're a huge Garrett Wilson fan, definitely maybe they can trade up, but I think overall it's very unlikely, but he is kind of seen as the number one wide receiver, and that's the big reason why. But like I said, kind of struggles against the physical corners. So to me, I'm fine with missing out on him. But let's actually go to the very next wide receiver. And the big wide receiver that we've probably all heard about, Chris Olave. So Chris Olave still a little bit smaller. He's about 6 foot and about 187. So a little bit bigger than Garrett Wilson, but still not the biggest of wide receivers. When I'm comparing him to Garrett Wilson, the thing that Chris Olave brings is he's actually an even better route runner because he's just that next level of route runner, just very clean, always gets open, can create that separation, and also pretty good jump ball ability as well. So really, I like him as an overall prospect. I think the thing that is probably keeping him from not being a top tier prospect is that a lot of people out there, they kind of call him a number 2. If you watch some of the tape, it doesn't necessarily wow you because he doesn't break a lot of tackles. He really doesn't, and you expect that out of a college player, but Chris Olave doesn't necessarily bring that all that much at the wide receiver position. Of course, as people on YouTube just saw him break a tackle, so what about that? It's a highlight film for a reason. He normally doesn't break a lot of tackles, and that's actually the biggest critique on him. So maybe he falls, we'll see, but where a lot of people are kind of saying he's going is in that 15 to 25 range. PFF has him ranked going about 20. The Draft Network has him going about 27, which I think is a little low, but I'm fine with him dropping. He is somebody that is a candidate for the Bears to trade up, like I said, in that 15 to 25 range. So we really need to see, are the Bears really going to be that aggressive? I personally don't think so because we've heard polls say that he wants to keep a lot of the picks. This is his first year. Maybe it's all a smokescreen. This is smokescreen season, so we have to be a little bit weary. But I really like Chris Olave with the Bears, even though that a lot of people out there say that he's a number 2. Not my words, but I can kind of see some of the comps, though, with that. He's just a number 2 type of a wide receiver. But I do think, selfishly, I would like to see the Bears get him, even though I don't like trading up. Selfishly, as a Bears fan, come on. It would be unbelievable to see Chris Olave and Justin Fields kind of rekindle that. And I do think with them, it's a lot of that chemistry that we would just really want to see out of them with a Darnell Mooney on the opposite side. Come on, that's exciting. But we will see. The thing that is scary, though, is 31% of mock drafts done by people at PFF. They have the Packers selecting him 31% of the time. So it seems to be a favorite for a lot of people that do create mock drafts out there. So hopefully he doesn't at least fall to the Packers, but they do have all those different draft picks. So it could be a reality at least. So like we said, very, very clean, crisp route runner. I think of him kind of like a smaller scale Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper seemed to have a little bit more meat on his bones, but Chris Olave, a phenomenal route runner. You just expect him to break more tackles because he's so quick and such a clean route runner, but unfortunately, he just doesn't do that. And also, just from an overall ranking perspective, he might be going in the 15 to 25. PFF has him ranked as the 21st best prospect, the Draft Network at 18, and the Consensus Big Board has him at the 17th best prospect on the board. So, we'll see. Do you want the Bears to trade up for him? Let me know in the comments. Let me know on social media. I'm curious to just hear how many Olave lovers are there. And if there's Garrett Wilson lovers that say you have to trade up that extra spot, let me know because I'd love to hear if you really, really like any of those prospects. So let's actually go to the next one. So we always talk about the wide receivers. Everyone talks about the wide receivers. How amazing would that be? But I think that this guy really has been getting a lot more love as of recent, and that is Nicholas Petit-Frere. I'm slowly starting to get better at that name, so hopefully the Bears end up getting him. But really, when you look at him, he is a left tackle for Ohio State. But what's also awesome is that he was a right tackle for 2 seasons and then switched over to the left side. Now, when he switched over to that left side, he did let up a lot more pressures than he has any other season. But I will say, looking at his feet, I do like his feet a little bit more at that left spot. So he's actually shown a lot of really, really good tape. So what can we say about him? He's got great size. You like the versatility of playing left tackle and right tackle. Also, he's played very well. He's an incredible zone blocker. So he had a grade of 88, according to PFF, in a zone blocking scheme from the run game. So what that means is chances are the Bears are going to be running a zone scheme. So obviously, if you have this guy who's a phenomenal zone blocker, you want to see him in a zone scheme. He had a 64.5 grade according to PFF in the gap scheme. So what you're seeing there is that you want him in kind of a Bears type of offense. He's got that mobility that you want to see. Now, the thing is, so what are the cons? Because we're talking about he's actually got pro level size. He's got very good feet at that left tackle spot. So what are some of the cons? So one thing that gets me a little bit nervous is that he had a 25-inch vertical jump. So what you're seeing is the vertical is all about the pop, all about that explosiveness. And really, when you don't see somebody with that level of pop, you get a little bit nervous. And that I don't see a huge amount of pop to his game, which for a guy that size, you kind of wish that there was a little bit more oomph as he's pushing. Some people don't really like his hands. I'm not in love with his hands, but I will say, though, that you can see sometimes he doesn't necessarily leverage his hands too much. But the biggest concern about Nicholas Petit-Frere is that this year he got abused against Nebraska, Penn State, and Michigan. He had 3 games, and he ended up letting up 19 total pressures. That's a lot, considering that normally after that, he only let up 7 in his other 9 starts. And I believe in 5 of those, he didn't even let up a single pressure. So you let up 19 pressures in 3 games, and all of them, I believe, were towards the end of the season. So when you're talking about what type of a player are you getting, the biggest thing that people are nervous about is, did he just get exposed in the Nebraska game, in the Penn State game, in Michigan? When he went against Hutchinson, he got cooked. He got dominated. When you go against NFL talent, is that when you start to see him really struggle? And that's what a lot of people are kind of a little bit nervous about, because he put a lot of first-round grade tape on. Like, he showed that he's like, hey, I could potentially be a first-round caliber prospect. And then all of a sudden, you see these 3 terrible games and gets a lot of people nervous. So if I'm Eberflus, what I'm looking at is, how did they attack him differently? Why is it that in those 3 games, you see a completely different player than you have all season? So that's really why you see him drop. So where could we potentially get this player who can play left tackle and or right tackle? First off, his overall rank, PFF has him ranked 86. The Draft Network has him ranked 71. And also the Consensus Big Board has him as the 65th best player. Now, the average draft position is about 83 according to PFF and 75 for the Draft Network. So now we're talking about people that we could actually potentially draft rather than first round hopes that maybe Olave somehow seems to fall. But this is where he could be a viable selection at that 3rd round spot. Like I said, he's got the left tackle versatility, right tackle potential as well, so you could have him compete against a Tevin Jenkins, a Larry Borum, but also he plays best in his own scheme. From a run blocking perspective, you would love to see him in our potentially zone-heavy type of scheme. I think he fits right in with a lot of this, and also maybe you throw him at right tackle because that's what Justin Fields is used to. You just have to see, because Larry Borum seemed to be a solid left tackle. Tevin Jenkins, if he's already at the left tackle spot, then just have them duke it out and then maybe have him be the right tackle that Justin Fields is used to. So he is somebody that could be a selection at that number 71 spot, third round, 71st selection. So we'll see. But that's really who he is. The biggest knock are those 3 games. I had the Oregon game up on YouTube, but really the Penn State, Nebraska, and Michigan games are all stuff that we should be watching if we really think that he could be somebody for this team at that tackle spot. But let's actually move down to another potential selection for the Bears. This is actually, I feel like this is now kind of slowly becoming a fan favorite. And that player is none other than Jeremy Ruckert. So Jeremy Ruckert is the tight end and honestly has had such incredible production. I believe his overall completion percentage when targeted is like 91%. It's something absolutely absurd. Now, him coming out, this what people get nervous about is that Jeremy Ruckert only had about 3 targets a game. Only 3 targets. That's kind of next to nothing. So to me, when you're seeing somebody that is rarely targeted, is it because they had so much talent at the wide receiver room that he just never had the opportunity to shine? Now, what he kind of reminds me of, and the big question mark, is he didn't get a lot of touches. Is there some untapped potential? When you see Jeremy Ruckert is not a receiver, as he just scored a touchdown on YouTube. Jeremy Ruckert is really a red zone and blocker type of a guy. And that's also really good because if you have somebody that is a very good blocker like Ruckert, he's a very physical, very big man, which you want to see out there. And what is that? How much do you prioritize that? To me, day one, he comes in as the number 2 tight end for the Bears, for really any team out there, because he can block really well and he can kind of be seen as the red zone target. What he does really well is he sits in zones very, very well. Think of it like kind of like an Austin Hooper. He's not beating someone with his route running. What he's beating people with is he sees a hole in the zone and he sits in it. So what you see with him is that he's a potential reliable target when it comes to zone, but not necessarily in the middle of the field. Think of him kind of like a Jimmy Graham if Jimmy Graham could block. So you give him good blocking and kind of that red zone threat. But what I also really love about him is he kind of reminds me of Cole Kmet, where he's always trying to just lay the lumber on somebody. Cole Kmet never tries to juke. He just tries to smack you in the face. So to me, I like that. If you have Cole Kmet and a Jeremy Ruckert always just trying to dominate someone and smack someone in the face, that's going to tire down a lot of different offenses. So really, the biggest knock is the feet, his route running ability. He seems a little bit slow, a little bit lumbery when he is running a specific route. So that's what a lot of people just kind of knock him on, that he's just more of the big guy, the blocker, and a good red zone type of a target. But where exactly do other people have Jeremy Ruckert? Now, Jeremy Ruckert, PFF has him rated as the 120th prospect in the draft. The Draft Network has him rated as the 82nd draft prospect in the draft, so significant difference of about 40 slots, but the consensus big board has him at about 88. So it's really that kind of end of the third round, and that brings up a lot of different questions, because where are people actually selecting him? When are people actually picking him off the draft board? We're getting later in the draft, so it's a little bit more, it's more of an enigma. We don't necessarily know where some of these people are going, because later as you go, you're just kind of taking guesses. Someone might just jump up and grab someone, or they might be falling down a little bit. But the Draft Network has him going around the 80th selection, and PFF has him going around 107. So what we're looking at is kind of in the no Bears picks land, if you will, because we have the third pick, which is 71st overall, and then our next pick is 148th overall. So to me, the hardest part about Ruckert, I like the idea of Ruckert with a Cole Kmet, because like I said, the big blocking, I think that Cole Kmet becomes more of that in between the 20s type of a receiver. And then you have Jeremy Ruckert as more of a red zone guy and also blocking. He also has lined up in fullback. Now we do have Blazingame, but still just having an extra blocker out there can be really nice. This is someone that's hard to select unless we end up trading down and we get some sort of 4th round pick or a late 3. I really can't see the Bears really selecting him because I think our 3rd round pick is just a little bit too high. Yes, TDN had him at the 80, but I don't know. I think that's a little bit too rich for someone that might just be a blocking tight end. Now, I've seen some other draft scouts that have talked about him, and some people are saying he's the next George Kittle. Some people say he's the next tight end that nobody has really kind of given love to because you see the hands. He's got very good hands, very reliable type of a target, and someone might fall in love with it. But I still just don't see the route running per se. But I think he's just a solid overall type of a player. But let me know what you think down in the comments. I think that Jeremy Ruckert could be good. We can see. Good blocker. Does get a little over his skis sometimes when he is blocking, but still aggressive and one of the top blocking prospects from a tight end perspective. But let's go to the next player. Next player on our list. This is where we start getting into, you might not have heard many of these players. And the first one that we're going to go through is a Tyreke Smith. He plays the edge, just in case if you didn't know, because he's not a really household name. For those that are watching on YouTube, he's number 11 if you end up finding him, because he's not the normal guy that you are typically seeing out there. Now, something that I do want to say about Tyreke Smith is, to me, he's very confusing. And what I mean by that is he has a 20% pass rush win rate, which is just absolutely absurd. He's winning 20% of the time that he's out there from pass rush to sack production, but he did hurry the pass rusher and the passer a lot of different times. The thing too, incredible moves. He's very good with his hands, so you really like what you can see that he's got the plethora of different moves. He did go to Ohio State, who has churned out a lot of different pass rushers. Great length, great size, active hands, pass rush moves. What else could you want, right? But this is the biggest knocks on him. He's not a very bendy type of guy. When you see him out there, he's kind of got this awkwardness, if you will. It's like that it factor. For some reason, he can use his hands like crazy, but you're not seeing the bend. You're not seeing that next level type of quality as you see him get a sack on the screen. But to me, though, it's really about his run defense. His run defense is very poor. He's always going for the passer. You can't really have him. The Buckeyes didn't like having him out there on typical run downs because he just wasn't a good run stuffer. So if you get him, are you throwing him in as a 3rd down type of pass rusher? Because he's shown that he has all the moves that you want to see out of an edge, but he's just a little bit crazy and unreliable when it comes down to the run stuffing. So also, we don't necessarily need an edge, but I just still wanted to kind of cover every single Ohio State draft prospect. So overall, pass rush specialist. PFF has him rated as the 136th prospect. Like I said, we're going a lot farther down on the draft board now. The Draft Network has him ranked as 102nd, so a little bit higher, and the overall draft board is 147. So the Draft Network loves him. PFF is a little bit higher on him than the consensus, but really a lot of people a lot lower. But this is the interesting part. PFF and TDN both have him going a lot higher than typically ranked. PFF has him going 128th or around that area, and the Draft Network has him going around 108. Now the Bears, we have the 5th round draft pick, which is pick 148. So if he ends up going at pick 128 or around that area, there is some potential chance that he does fall to the Bears. Do I think that the Bears would draft him if he's available? Probably not. We don't really need an edge rusher now that we have Muhammad, Gibson. Also, you have Charles Snowden. We always forget about him, and also Itachu. A lot of those players can still come out and play. So, do I think he's worth that pick? It'll be interesting if as a pass rush specialist, but when you have Quinn, who is a pass rush specialist, and Gibson, who can be the fresh body that just flies in on third downs, I don't really think that you need a Tyreke Smith as your edge type of player. Now we're getting in, there's 3 more players. So the next player out there is someone that I really started to like as soon as I started putting on the film, and that is Haskell Garrett. Haskell Garrett is a defensive interior player from Ohio State and really specializes as that 3 technique. So that 3 technique, what Larry Ogunjobi was supposed to be, that's the Tommy Harris role, as we all know as Bears fans. It's that pass rush where you go against one player, you kind of play the B gap, and honestly, I think he has a lot of upside. He was first seen as a late second round player, but then has kind of dropped because of the pre-draft process and could be around about the 5th round type of a selection. So he can drop and be a good situational kind of 3 technique type of player for us. And the big knocks is I've heard sometimes he gets a little bit too winded, even though he's a very good athlete. He sometimes gets a little bit winded, so they kind of see him as more of a rotational type of guy. He's got really good burst, really good length, really good just size overall. You do want to see him be a little bit stronger in the run game, but honestly, a very good pass rushing 3 technique that if the Bears got in the 5th round, I'd be more than happy with, because he's someone that, yes, you have like a Kairos Tonga that can maybe be the backup to like a Jones, but then you have a Haskell Garrett that you could potentially get that is kind of that, yet again, 3rd down pass rush specialist, because he has the quickness, he's got the burst, and maybe he can develop into something. He's got a lot of the great traits, and we have some good coaches, and supposedly, hopefully we can get the best out of him. But I really like him. When you're looking across the league, PFF is not a big fan. So the consensus big board, I'll start there, is 122nd. Pretty high on him. But PFF is 188. They have him ranked 188. That's really low, 66 spots lower, and the Draft Network has him ranked at 163. But where is he actually going? And PFF has him ranked going around 154, and the Draft Network has him going at 176. So 176 is the tail end of the 5th round, 154 kind of in that mid 5th round, if you will. So really, we have 2 5th round draft picks, the 5th and the 7th. So 148 and 150. And if he's going around that 154 range, this could be a really good selection for us, because we still might need a couple good players on the interior of the defensive line. And I think that Haskell Garrett is a perfect rotational player that could be a very good 3 tech for us. And so I would totally be up for it if we brought someone like him in that has a lot of upside and also has had a lot of good production and was, like I said, seen as a 2nd round caliber prospect at the beginning of all this crazy draft cycle. But now we have 2 more left. So the next player that we're going to talk about, we're going back to the offensive line. So we're getting back to the same tape that we were watching before with the Oregon Ducks versus Ohio State. And we're talking about left guard Thayer Munford. So he's now the left guard. He was left guard for the Ohio State Buckeyes last year. But before that, he was actually the left tackle for Justin Fields. And Thayer Munford was seen as a top player. He was actually seen as a 1st round prospect. Like, no joke. They had him going in the 1st round during the season. But maybe because they shifted him down into left guard, a lot of people started kind of pushing him back. They're looking at him as more of an interior type of a player. So now that he's an interior guy, you start to see him slide. You don't see him as great as he was at left tackle. But also a big piece too was last year, he only allowed 3 hurries the entire year. Yes, it was a shortened season, so he had 264 snaps and passing snaps and only let up 3 hurries. That's absolutely incredible. When you see him at left guard, he's not doing as well as expected. So that's where a lot of people are getting scared off, why you see him dropping farther and farther and farther. Just like we had with Petit-Frere, he excels in a zone blocking type of run scheme. So yet again, a good scheme fit when it comes down to our overall blocking scheme in the run game. But also, he doesn't necessarily move too well laterally. He's a very good straight line runner, probably part of the reason why they also shifted him into the guard spot. He's athletic, but just not side to side. You see his feet are just kind of lumbering around him, and also pretty poor hands as well. So not great technique. Really kind of leverages his body size a lot more than he should. So if you can, he's a little quote unquote raw, if you will, compared to other offensive linemen out there. Hence the reason why he's going in the 5th round. Worth a look for sure, because like we said, he's had production, was the left tackle for Justin Fields, and performed very well at that left tackle spot. Poles love somebody who's versatile, so that's why we have he could potentially be someone that is left tackle or left guard. Do you even try him out at right guard? We don't know yet. But where exactly is he supposed to be going? So the consensus rank is 123. So honestly, not that bad. They're kind of looking at him similar to a Haskell Garrett. Thayer Munford, though, is the 137th ranked prospect according to PFF. And for the Draft Network, he's ranked 183. But if we flip the script and we go and see where exactly is he going, it's a weird picture because PFF has him going at 130 and the Draft Network has him going at 166. So we have this weird impasse where exactly is he going? Because you're talking about late 4, or is he a late 150? But really, it's an interesting case. Thayer Munford, solid, big, but really just needs to kind of be coached up a little bit. Has had very good production, and like we said too, a 1st round caliber prospect that could drop to you in the 5th. Might be worth taking a shot. See what Justin Fields has to say. And yeah, ask Justin Fields. Be like, okay, if we had Munford on your left, like you had before, and Petit-Frere on your right side, do you feel safer or do you feel like you're more in danger? Ask him that question, see what he has to say, and maybe just take his word. We're not the Packers. We listen to our star quarterback. But let's go to the last prospect. This last prospect, I'm just going to spoil it a little bit. He's actually going undrafted. A lot of people have him. TDN has him going 329th, which is not drafted. And PFF didn't even have him on the draft board. Might be wondering who this person is and how much do we really care about this person. Also, the consensus big board's 426th player. But he's not that rank if you look at his name, and that is Master Teague. So Master Teague is a running back for the Ohio State Buckeyes. Like I said, most likely going to be in that undrafted range. You don't really have to worry about drafting him at all unless somebody is super, super high on him. For those watching on YouTube, I'm playing his 2019 highlight film. Why? Because this is where he started getting a lot of people excited. He has an NFL size to him, which is awesome to see in a running back, especially if you're getting him into the undrafted range. But why is he not seen as good as he was back in the day? And that is because he tore his Achilles in 2020. After his Achilles tear, he really just has kind of fallen off of a lot of draft boards. He's been consistently banged up. He had another severe lower body injury last year. So you're talking about somebody, you need your legs when you are a running back. And he's already taking a beating already. So it gets a lot of people questioning, is he truly going to be a good player? You don't draft running backs high, and here's somebody who's really banged up. I think that, and also too, he's not necessarily like a zone runner. He's not trying to find the hole and he goes. He really just, as soon as he finds one hole, he's a one cut and run. He's not a patient runner, I'm just going to blow past a lot of people. But you see a lot of the strength. You see a lot of the ability to kind of make some people miss an open field. So to me, it's a very powerful, very high upside type of a pick, but the injuries are something that scares me off. I think Master Teague is someone that you either start to see as someone that can make a lot of active rosters, or he's somebody that you just literally never hear from again because he's just too injured. Like I said, 2 severe lower body injuries for a running back, especially when one of those is tearing your Achilles. It's hard when you're a running back that specializes in a lot of that power and a lot of that burst. But I like what I saw out of him in 2019. But when we're talking about now, current, I get a little bit more nervous. So that's about it. Those are all kind of the draftable prospects, if you will, from Ohio State. I hope you learned something with this because, yeah, we all want some Ohio State prospects. We all want to see it, but just kind of going through all the prospects again. Just who did we talk about? Garrett Wilson, kind of going in that 8 to 15 range, wide receiver. Most likely not going to be a Bear. Chris Olave, it could potentially be a Bear if the Bears decided to trade up. It's realistic in the 15 to 25 range and a very good route runner and good buddy of Justin Fields. Nicholas Petit-Frere, we're looking at him at potentially that 3rd round range. It's a perfect spot for him to get selected. Like we said, left tackle and right tackle flexibility, but played right tackle with Justin Fields. A little bit better of feet at left tackle. And then also now we get into kind of the no man's land with Jeremy Ruckert, the tight end, and Tyreke Smith, the edge. Do I think that the Bears are going to get Tyreke Smith? Most likely not. But Jeremy Ruckert, a very hard-nosed type of player that the Bears might end up really liking. The only hard part is, how much do you prioritize a blocking tight end? Do you think he can do a little bit more? Do you ask Justin Fields, hey, do you think he wasn't necessarily being utilized because you already have incredible wide receivers? It's worth at least some form of discussion with Justin Fields. And later on in the drafts, we're starting to look at Haskell Garrett, the interior D line. Like we said, good rotational 3 technique that the Bears can get with one of their 5th round draft picks. Thayer Munford, the guard / left tackle maybe. I don't think he's that size. I think more people see him as a guard, but yet again, a 1st round talent last year or seen during the season, but really has plummeted on draft boards that the Bears could potentially get there. And Master Teague the third, you could potentially get as an undrafted rookie free agent. Maybe he comes in at that. Justin Fields puts in a good word for him, and maybe you just kick the tires, but don't expect anybody to really be spending a draft pick on him unless he completely wows and just completely unforeseeable wowing at a pro day. But I hope that you learned something today. It means so much for every follow. I think we're close to 300. Love to see that get up to 500. Thank you all so much. Make sure to like, make sure to subscribe, make sure to find us out on social media. We have Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Just search for Unbearable Sports and you can find us. And Unbearable Sports Podcast, we're out.
Yeah, she's got some nice long hair, and you know that she's a bad chick.
Thank you for listening to this Belly Up Sports Podcast Network product. Some said we go belly up, so we made it our name, and we're still here.